Packers on the Rocks fans, welcome to your Week 15 recap of the Packers' backbreaking loss against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Very reminiscent of when the Buccaneers marched into here a couple seasons ago in the NFC Championship game, making it their home. The Lambeau mystique and watching these Florida teams come into Lambeau with no sort of hesitation is still a really tough pill for me to swallow. Kiss our playoff chances potentially goodbye. And Dave, let's go ahead and open up the tab of
Well,
this true gut reactions recap of the game.
for starters, the mystique of Lambeau has been gone since the Michael Vick game, so I want to just get that out of the way. But for this game, you can't start anywhere else but the defense. Baker Mayfield stats 384, 4 touchdowns, perfect passer rating. Um, I actually feel bad for the players. I don't think it's talent at this point. I think it's schematically. I think they're in bad spots. We saw Preston lined up against the wide receiver again today. Um, the players seem to be, besides the handoffs in zone, which I know me and you have talked about extensively in terms of them lacking the communication when they're in zone of passing off the wide receiver to the other half of the field. I mean, Van Ness had a sack. Clark had two. Like, Inakbari had the sack of the year coming from behind and strip sacking Baker and actually catching the fumble as he's tumbling to the ground. The players have all the talent in the world. They're just set up in the wrong positions in the times. I mean, you're there. You had a front row seat to it. The one play that really stuck out was the 3rd and 29. You can't play 18 yards off coverage and let them get that huge chunk back and make it manageable.
I thought it was like a second
Or second and
29.
29.
Yeah,
Sorry.
second and 29. They're backed up. Chris Godwin has like a 20 plus yard
Mm-hmm.
catch. And then so that play was the one I let out a huge F bomb, which by the way, 40 degrees at Lambeau felt more like 15 or even 10 degrees for how we played on this Sunday mid afternoon slot. It was that play, and then it was that 3rd and 12 quick
Yep.
wide receiver screen to Godwin. They picked up the first down. I let out a big old F bomb and saying, gosh darn it, and some other sort of explicitives. And Dave, if you would have asked me heading into this one, I know we missed the preview here yesterday. Yeah, hey, maybe for a good reason because both of us had some signs of this to come. But if you would have asked me like, hey, what does Joe Barry need to do in this game plan? I'm like, we need to somehow trick Joe Barry into thinking that we're playing Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Joe
Yeah.
Burrow, or Josh Allen because our defense always seems to answer the bell when we play those top tier quarterbacks, but then when we play like a Baker Mayfield, it's like, all right, we're going to play to that talent level and underestimate him. And unlike the Rams game and unlike Vegas, when they have top tier wide receivers, like Baker Mayfield can get these guys the ball. So I don't know. I guess maybe we need to sort of trick Joe Barry into thinking that we're playing top 5 quarterbacks. Otherwise, he's just going to play this lackadaisical soft zone.
So the big thing with Barry is with the upper echelon quarterbacks with Mahomes and Herbert and those guys is the soft zone works because those guys want to push the ball down the field. Like, you're gonna sit back too high shell, give them all the cushion in the world because they just don't want to necessarily take the 6 yard underneath route. They want to throw it 20 yards downfield, make the splash plays. Guys with Baker Mayfield, if you're playing 8 yards off and you're saying, yeah, we don't want you throwing it down the field to Mike Evans, he's going to take the 8 yard in route with Chris Godwin, who's going to turn it upfield, break a tackle, and turn that 8 yard in route into a 22-yard gain. It just doesn't work. Like, you need to have different approaches based on who you're playing. I don't want to get into the trash Joe Barry stuff. I'm sure I've seen it enough on social media. I'm not. It's time. I mean, it was time last year. It's time this year. They're not going to do it in season. You're going to have to ride the wave for the rest of the year. But it's disheartening because we're going over it. Aaron Jones had a fantastic first drive. Then he was on a pitch count, so he slowly disappeared, and the run game disappeared with it. But outside of a few throws, Love had a really good game. The rest, Tucker Kraft had a great game. Wicks was 3 yards shy of a 100-yard game. The defense is just very poorly ran.
And it was like the same play over and over again. Those like 10 to 15 yard drag routes or ends that Baker's read in the middle of the field. And I kept a pretty keen eye today on Mike Evans where he was lined up, and they kept moving him around kind of like what we did with Devontae. And I saw Eric Stokes on him a lot, which, hey, Eric Stokes, you're given a pretty tall task coming off of not having played over an entire year of football. And I thought, like Aaron Jones coming this one, yeah, both those two guys will probably get about 10 to 15 snaps apiece and be on a pretty quick pitch count. And then I see Eric Stokes out there for the first possession on defense. I'm like, damn, all right. Well, they're going to ask him to match up one-on-one against one of the game's really all-time best. He's a very quiet assassin in Mike Evans. And, I mean, I would have preferred having Carrington Valentine lined up on Mike Evans, even though it was more so Chris Godwin, and those in routes. And I watched Rudy Ford lined up over Mike Evans at time and Chris Godwin. and Rudy Ford's like 15 yards back off the line of scrimmage. I'm like, that's an easy completion for a slant play over the middle of the field. Like, there was at least 3 or 4 that I saw right in before the ball was snapped. I'm like, fuck, Dave, I already know where the ball is going with this one with Baker Mayfield. I'm like, I'm not an NFL quarterback, but this is a pretty easy read if you ask me.
It's just okay. So this team's not ready for a track meet type game. We're very methodical with how we go about on offense. It's long drives. It's trying to be as efficient as possible. We just can't. There are chunk plays mixed in, but we just can't consistently give. We can't consistently get the chunk plays. But the way this defense plays, we just allow them. Like, okay, here's a free 18 yards. Here's another free 8-yard run. It's really hard right now with how young this team is on offense and trying to get cohesion to keep up with that type of defensive performance.
And it's so tough to watch when there's a couple sacks, or they're in a third or second and long. Was it the LVN sack, or was it a Kenny Clark sack? They're like, all right, we're gonna get our defense off the field. We got them really backed up, and here they are getting a chunk play for 15, 20 yards to pick up the first down. And I'm like, that is so demoralizing as a defense. That how you're then gonna try to be able to put the pieces back together and get a stop on defense.
I want him to just be like, let the guys ball out. Like, if they give up, a huge play because you're playing press man and the guy just gets beat by the other guy across the field and you allow up a 50-yard touchdown, people are going to be pissed. But it's better than just sitting back there and just taking it every single drive.
Speaking of being pissed, what was it, Matt LaFleur's press conference on Monday that he was getting on Joe Barry? He's like, we were supposed to play press. Instead, they're playing soft zone and that 2-minute drive by the Giants. I'd imagine there was some miscommunication going on today as well between maybe what Matt LaFleur wanted, or who knows if it's what Joe Barry wants, and then what's actually called out in the field. But there was finally some frustration shown by Matt LaFleur after the Giants game, and how basically we gave them the easiest drive down the field to put up 3 points and to win the game. And I'd imagine that there's got to be some other similar type of messaging going on after this one. It was
the same way in the first half, right? What are we doing? We're just letting them go down and kick a field goal at the end of the first half.
Is there any? What are the positives?
That's what I want to flip to, man. All right, we're gonna flip to the offense because the offense was positive. 284 yards from Jordan Love, 111 passer rating, 2 touchdowns. He botched that 4th down throw to Reed, but he started out with 9 straight completions in the second half. He's a rhythm passer. You got to get him settled into the game. And then Kraft and Jones were the guys in the first half. And then you were begging for more Wicks, and Wicks came alive in the second half. He was angry running when he caught the football.
And as much as that we want to say how great of a game that Love had against the Chiefs and the Chargers and even the Lions or even the Steelers, like, you take this one, all things into consideration, that besides that first drive with Jones getting the rock, like he did this all afternoon without a run game. It looked like Rodgers in 2011 with five wide shotgun formation. We're not handing out the football. Like there was no play action fakes in this game whatsoever. And Love was still spreading the ball around
Yeah.
the field. And I'm so glad that Wicks was getting involved in the offense, because I always think if Wicks is getting the ball, that's when good things are happening and we're in rhythm and picking up first downs on offense.
Love is going to end up with right around 30 touch. I mean, he's going to go 30 or more touchdowns, and he's going to have over 4,000 yards on the year. I want to get to you on Wicks real quick because I know we're both high on him. You're really high on him. Towards the end of this year, the next, till we finish out the year, and then next year, I know Watson is a big key in this offense, whether it's deep threat, sweeps. We have all these young playmakers under contract for a number of years, but with Wicks, do you see him taking over as the number one wide receiver in the future? Because the coaching staff even says he has footwork like Tay. He's a basketball type dude. I'm high on Reed, but Reed's the slot guy. He's kind of the gadget guy. I like getting the ball in his hands. But with Wicks specifically, what do you see in him, and what do you think that his role is going to be in this offense?
I don't see him being a one. I still think we're missing a one. Like, I don't know if Watson, you can necessarily say he's a bona fide Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, Devontae Adams, the list goes on. But what I will say is that I think he has more upside than Romeo Doubs. Now, Romeo Doubs has great hands, he's an aggressive pass catcher, and he's great in the red zone. But I think from goal line to goal line, Wicks is a true possession receiver that has an amazing job of finding the soft spots in the zone. So if anything, if I'll go on record of saying that I see him overtaking Romeo Dobbs' spot as that number 2 option in the offense outside of Jaden Reed, but he's that slot guy, not your true boundary receiver. So I see that as being like the ceiling for Dontavian Wicks in this offense, sort of like that Jordy Nelson possession receiver, Devontae at times. He's not going to blow the top off the defense with those deep plays. But if you look at if you go back and take a look at that 3-game winning stretch, or even today, or that Steelers game, the offense is truly clicking when he has at least one touch during those drives.
Yeah, I in terms of, that's hard to say because I mean he's bowling dudes over. He wants it. I know he doesn't have the top end speed in terms of just breaking the catch loose, but man, he's exciting to watch. I mean, it's Watson has his really highs and lows. Dobbs is kind of that red zone guy, like you said, or got to have it third down, tight window, catch it. But I see Wicks playing a huge part in this future. And when Musgrave comes back, that'll be really exciting because Kraft is really developing the last couple of games with being the main tight end. This offense is going to be fun once it finally gets that full cohesion. A lot of young guys growing together. And apart from a few plays, pass protection held up really well today. Obviously there's parts on the offensive line that we'd like to see an upgrade in the offseason, but this offense is going to be really fun in the passing game for a number of years once we kind of reach that full kind of, like I said, been saying cohesion, because there's still the delay of game penalties. There's Wicks and Reed ran the same out route on that one pass that Love just had to chuck it out of bounds.
Dave, I got to ask, Dontavian Wicks, like, do you see him being number 1? How about Tucker Kraft? Like, do you see him being tight end 1, overtaking Luke Musgrave there when he comes back? And I think about what that dynamic duo will be here in 2024 season. Like, what do you think is the ceiling for Tucker Kraft at this moment?
I mean, when we drafted both of them on draft day after our recap, I think we said that we are both thinking in terms of like, okay, this is going to be a Gronk and Hernandez situation. I mean, Gronk's a Hall of Famer. I don't necessarily know how their careers play out and if one of them pops out to be a Hall of Famer, but possible Pro Bowl for one of them or both of them. Musgrave obviously has a little bit of trouble staying on his feet after the catch, but he gets wide ass open, and Love was very confident in throwing him the ball, and now it seems like Kraft has kind of picked right up where Musgrave kind of got injured on, where Love is very confident in throwing him the ball, but Kraft is getting so much more yards after the catch.
It's so exciting watching him as a tight end. Even like back to the Jermichael Finley days, he'd break a couple tackles here and there. Mark Chimera, I know that he was known as a bowling ball back there in the 90s and such a true safety blanket for Brett Favre. But you really think of tight ends throughout our time. I don't know if we've had quite that sort of prototype at tight end, Dave, where as soon as he's catching the ball, like he even tried making another hurdle attempt on the sideline in this game. Like he is the type of Packer player that every single time he catches the ball, like you can't help but be excited as a Packers fan for potentially rumbling down the field, breaking tackles left and right. And it's not like he's this like enormous 6'6", 270-pound presence like Rob Gronkowski, but he's one of those true backyard football players that you lace him up, and you've seen some of the tweets that he's came out with these past couple weeks that he's like a true punisher, I guess you could say, when he gets the ball in his hands. But yeah, you talk about just from player development standpoint alone, like Tucker Kraft, how much he's came along. And then for the offensive line, I was starting to pay attention. I think it's been the last couple weeks now that Josh Nijman has been rotating in with Rasheed Walker, but I did see a lot of Sean Ryan this afternoon.
Yes. To your quick point, going back, I absolutely think you build this offense around Wicks, Reed, Musgrave, and Kraft. Like, and Love is going to be the future for a little bit here. Like, he's definitely shown enough to stick around next year, and next year is going to be a very big key in where we go from there because it's year 2 of all the pass catchers catching up. But those are the guys you're going to build the team around on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, I would love Sean Ryan to be in the game more. He held up fairly well. I still think that's where we're missing the building blocks, right? Like you have Zach Tom. I don't know about Bakhtiari's future. Your left tackles are really hanging up in the air, especially if Bakhtiari's gone. I don't know if Rasheed Walker's the future. I don't know if Yash is going to be gone after this year. And then obviously Elton. You have Elton. So that's kind of Elton and Zach are definitely the guys you build the offensive line around. But this could be a heavy offensive line draft. If you take 4 or 5 swings at it, it's kind of like that wide receivers or the running backs back in the old days. You draft 3 or 4 guys and see who sticks.
Definitely draft at least a couple guards, a couple tackles. And yeah, they held up well, but there was still, just like the Chiefs game and the Lions or even the Giants, there was a number of times there was some interior pressure in Love's face, and he's getting rid of the ball, throwing it towards Dontavian Wicks or Jaden Reed. Like, I wouldn't say it was the cleanest pocket for him and him having to get rid of the ball. And Vita Vea
that's a tough defense. That's a tough defense, and they pressure heavily.
Yep, and I would say Vita Vea, he's an absolute force to deal with there as a nose tackle on the defensive front. But yeah, hey, all things considering, this is a pretty impressive one for Love that I don't think a lot of people will talk about, or he'll be on ESPN saying giving him a ton of praise. But all things counting against him in this game, like I thought Love performed quite well.
This is going to go down as the Joe Barry game, right? Like the media is going to praise Baker Mayfield up the wazoo, mainstream media, of how well he played in Lambeau Field. and it's going to be kind of talks of how the Packers couldn't keep up with that offense and what are they doing on the defense. And internally, Packers Nation, who knows this team really well, is going to be this is going to be like the Fire Joe Barry game where you put on the clip and say this is why he needs to go. Real one last point on the defense. Did you notice that LVN on his sack was hands in the dirt again?
I didn't know, but what I did see is that it was a twist, or
Yes.
whatever you would call it. That he starts on the
Stunt
outside and he
twist.
works, yeah, stunt twist. He did that in the Chiefs game, and he almost got a sack on that type of play against Patrick Mahomes. And uh, I want to say that's been something that's been called upon more recently.
Mhm.
And thankfully, it's like the sort of gradual progress of LVN. Hey, let's put his hand in the dirt. All right, now let's get him doing some twist and moving around when he's pass rushing instead of just doing his bull rush towards the quarterback. So yeah, I did notice that he's moving around the line when he's moving upfield towards the QB.
This is going to be a draft class, and I sent it to you. This is going to be a draft class for years to come, and they're going to a lot of them are going to get a huge payday in 4 years. But there's going to be a huge draft class that propels the Packers that people are going to be talking about. You got LVN, which I know he has 3 sacks. A lot of people expect rookies to be way outperforming what he's been performing, but he's giving you as much as he can give you for the amount of snaps he's on the field for. You got a steal in Carrington Valentine. You have a starting cornerback in the 7th round. And then you got Wicks, Reed, Musgrave, and Kraft. Like, you have so much star potential with just one draft class.
What about your boy Carl Brooks? You're forgetting about him too.
I forgot.
It's that deep of a draft class.
I know.
The guy that's like second or third in passes defended by the unit and his limited snaps. And we could do a quick like fact check. I think Rashawn only had like 3 sacks in his rookie season too. Now I know he played less than 10% in snaps. So
Yeah.
you talk about trajectory. LVN, I think he's right where he needs to be in that rookie season with the amount of snaps that he's been getting.
So that's the frustrating part about this defense. And I don't know if it's LaFleur saying, like, this is how I want this to go, but I would imagine that Barry has control over his defense, right? So he gets to control who he wants on the field. The talent that's just sitting on the sideline, letting these snaps like get taken up by other people is mind-boggling. Like, I get it. TJ Slayton had actually a really good game. He got some pressures. He was a run stuffer, but like, let Carl Brooks get in there more. Let Wooden get in there more. Like, LVN should be on the field. Like, I get it, Preston's there, but like, there's players that aren't being utilized, and there's just scheme with your players that you're not utilizing. Like, Carrington Valentine is a true press man corner. Jair was the same way. Like, what's the point of being 6-7 yards off? What's the point in not sending like a Quay Walker who's just sitting in the middle of the field? Like, send him every once in a while. It's beyond frustrating that we just sit back and let the offense dictate what the defense does, which back in the days, dude, like we saw the Reggie White documentary, the defense used to dictate the game. Now we're with Joe Barry, we're just letting the offense do whatever they want.
Want to so asinine about that? Like, we pride ourselves in drafting upon RAS and athleticism and raw talents alone. Like, isn't the whole point of drafting those type of players to put them in positions to succeed and to play to like their strengths?
Yes.
Instead, we're playing to this true bend but don't break defense, and we don't really play the hot hand either. It's like you have all the athleticism in the world, and like look no further than the Cowboys with Micah Parsons. They have this guy that can play inside, he can play outside, all around the field, and they play him as such. But instead, you have the players on the Packers like a Quay or a CV, and yeah, to your point, they're instead they just want to play this, hey, paper cut us down the field every single drive, have your way with us, but we're hopefully going to hold you to 3 points at the end of it.
It's not surprising that Packers, especially on the defensive side of the ball, when they leave, they excel at other places. Like, Rasul Douglas is rated like the number 1 cover corner in the league since going to Buffalo.
And now I'm gonna say I don't even still know if Jair and Rasul are playing in this game. Maybe Barry has a different defensive game plan in this one, but I still see almost that Baker's gonna gonna carve us up, just like
Yes. Yeah.
what happened here about a half an hour ago.
They have fun players too. Like there'd be fun packages to have, like Inikbari, LVN, Gary, Brooks, like Clark. Like put your dudes in there and just let them get after the guy. Okay, fine. You have to play man coverage and do a little press man, and you're sending 6 guys. It's risky, yes, and you still might give up an 18-yard gain, but it's a hell of a lot better than playing 3-man with 8 guys in coverage 12 yards off the field when they only need 8 yards for the first down.
Dave, are we going to look at like 2 plays? Or are we going to look at the Steelers game when we're blitzing like 3 and then we have 8 in coverage? That was like another like 3rd and a mile, and then we have this game that it's a 2nd and 29. Like, if you'd be able to pinpoint like maybe 5 examples of Joe Barry showing negligence, like this is one of those games that you could probably find about 2 or 3 examples from.
You could show negligence anytime he puts Preston Smith in coverage against a wide receiver. And it's happened 3 or 4 times already this year. Then he had a 2-man rush at one point, and then he had, I don't know, a 3-man rush on like the 2-yard line against the Steelers and just let them waltz into the end zone. Like, yes, I don't want to do the whole go with what everyone else on Packers media is talking about of Barry's the problem, but Barry's the problem.
Bring in Al Harris, Robert Saleh, Bill Belichick.
Yes, please. Al Harris, yes. I think it would be a great decision to bring in a defensive backs coach as your defensive coordinator. Why? Because they're aggressive and they allow for the mindset of, I gave up a big play, it's on to the next one.
But we can't, I mean, what would that be? 3 defensive coordinators in a row then? That's more of your bend but don't break philosophy. And
how would that be bend but don't break, though?
Oh, no, I'm saying if we didn't go with like an Al Harris. I'm saying if we went with more of like a Mike Pettin or a Dom Capers. Dom in his early
Dom dialed
days,
it up.
Yeah,
dialed it up at times.
I feel like he dialed up early days, but then towards the end part of it is when he got more of that sort of passive prevent defense type nature. But what I'm saying is I don't want to have another Mike Pettin or a Joe Barry back there. Like let's take our risk reward factor and see what happens. Dave, you got it? You got anything on teams here?
We made all of our kicks, and they fair caught the kickoffs every time, and then it was nothing atrocious happened. That's my teams.
I don't think anything stood out. K9, what do you have? Like 1, maybe 2 kickoff return opportunities.
The one thing that stood out was the Bucs kicker kicking it out of fucking Green Bay into Sheboygan.
That punt, I think the ball's still hanging in the air. Like Jaden Reed had no clue where that ball was at, how high and how far the thing went, and then it hit down at about like the 3-yard line, and then just
stuck.
Yeah, then just stuck, and like even their special teams gunners when they were coming down in the play almost flubbed it into the end zone. I'm like, that's probably one of the prettiest punts I've seen at Lambeau in some time.
So we said 2-2 to finish the year. We just didn't know which ones. We got Carolina coming up. I would expect a win there. If we lose against Carolina, the house, in terms of the fan base, is going to just unbolt Lambeau Field. But I'm thinking win against the Panthers, and then it's kind of a toss-up between the Vikings and the Bears. Vikings are a little bit on the decline, and Bears are the Bears, but the Bears have been playing somewhat better.
They said they got something special cooking for us here in a few weeks too, just like how during all those weeks in the offseason they were supposed to finish 12-5 when the NFC North. Justin Fields going to be the MVP of the league as well. Hey Dave, we've already got 6 wins though, so we're right on par with that 2008 season. A couple more, we finished the same record as last year's squad. So
I'm feeling
anything after this is just a bonus. If you ask me,
I'm really feeling 8-9.
I like that number.
I feel like that's just kind of like where we're sitting. And I know there's been a roller coaster for Packer fans in terms of, oh man, this team is atrocious, to, oh, we're making the playoffs, to, wow, like they're breaking our hearts again. But this is what we were talking about in August. going into this year, that this is what it's going to be like. And they got a couple of gravy wins, and they got a couple of losses that were like, man, that really sucks. So, yeah, we're going to finish out the year pretty much right where we wanted, not where we wanted, but where we were expecting to go. But the teams, in terms of wins and losses, were completely mixed up.
Yeah. They got me on the hype train there for a hot second.
I know it's really hard not to hop on.
I'm not going to lie. They had me there real quick.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of. I mean, what's the alternative? I mean, it would be great to make the playoffs. Don't get me wrong, but then you just get heartbroken in the playoffs. This was a rebuilding year, a shift in philosophy year, and it's going to be at the end of the year for some changes to be made. And I think at this point, if LaFleur wants to hitch his wagon to Barry, Goody goes over his head and says, if this is your philosophy, you keep your job and get rid of Barry, or you're both out the door.
I don't see a return for him at all.
I don't either. But
that does it for me. Now I don't have to sit here dejected after it. We got our therapy session in. We're good. Packers defense. Both of us had a feeling that we were due for a loss here this Sunday.
Yeah.
So, hey, it is what it is.
We still got a 27% chance of making it. You just got to run the table.
Well, our prophet Jair Alexander said we were going to run the table a while back, and now he's had 6 straight games of being on the sidelines. So,
yeah. All right, man. We got this one out of the way. We'll talk some Panthers, which I think we both expect a big kind of return for this team. And if we're sitting back against that Panthers offense, we're going to be talking about it quite a bit, because that is not – if we're making that offense look good, we have a lot more problems than we think.
That'll be the toughest loss of the season by and far. Yeah.
All right, man. You warm up. Maybe instead of beer, switch to a little bit of whiskey to warm the soul up. And Packers fans, thanks for joining us. Really sorry about this game, man. I'm very sorry about your hopes and your expectations for this team this year, but we're still with you guys.
Reality check at that. We're brought back down to earth, but that's all right.
All right, man. A lot to build on.
Absolutely.
All right, man. You enjoy.
Likewise. Cheers, Dave.